I vividly remember the day I left my hometown. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves. I packed everything I valued into my old pickup truck, determined to start fresh, far from the painful memories. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Betrayal and deceit had ruined my life, and the only way to heal was to distance myself from those who hurt me. After hours of driving, I found a quaint, sleepy town that seemed perfect for a new beginning. The locals were friendly, the pace was slow, and the town had a charming appeal. I discovered a small rundown gas station and garage that had been on the market for years. Seeing its potential, I made a low offer which was surprisingly accepted. This property became the foundation for rebuilding my life and business. One Saturday afternoon, I sat quietly in my favorite tavern, enjoying the peace. This tavern became my sanctuary. Shortly after moving here, I bought the local gas station and repair shop at a bargain price. Seeing its untapped potential, the previous owner was eager to sell after it sat on the market for 2 years. It was the perfect place for a fresh start, helping me leave my past behind. The first thing I did was build a large retail store facing the gas station to supply the town. After the only grocery store closed at 7 p.m., I moved the tank so the pumps were visible from the store, which left plenty of parking spaces for customers. The store was busiest from 7 p.m. to midnight and was open 24/7 th. The garage at the back of the lot was open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week, with special projects on Saturdays. Although the bar was initially upset when we started selling basic liquor, it eventually provided a good income and created needed jobs in the community. The business became very successful after restructuring the store's internal merchandising. Thanks to a woman I hired, it quickly repaid the equity loan and required doubling the staff due to high demand. On Friday and Saturday nights, we sold lots of junk food to bar patrons, and on Sundays we sold plenty of cold beer at reasonable prices. I was sipping a double shot of Jack Daniels with ice, water, and lemon, having just finished replacing the steering column in an old truck, a family heirloom. It took me 8 months to find the part and fabricate some fixtures. His family had driven this truck since the 40s, and he had no plans to stop. If he could, he would be buried in it. 4 to 7 was the best time at the bar since most regulars had already had dinner. In a couple of hours, the place would be filled with a musical crowd. Farmers brought their daughters for afterward fun. In my 6.5 years here, I built a solid reputation and made many friends. The locals looked out for each other and kept me informed of anything unusual. I came to the bar once a week, always on Saturdays for a drink before heading home. It was my quiet time to gather my thoughts. I saw them walk in and wished I hadn't. They ruined a perfect day. The woman was my ex's twin sister, and the young man with her was once my son. It brought back memories I didn't want. I realized you can't see evil when you live with it. The boy had grown up and looked more like his biological father. This proved the truth always comes out. Why were they looking for me now? They chatted with the bartender, showed him a picture, and then left. I was grateful for my long, unkempt hair, beard, and mustache, which made me look different, especially since I had lost weight. No one noticed the message I sent, which simply said, "Come home when I can." About a half hour later, the bartender came over and sat at my table. "What did they want?" "Tom, I asked they wanted to give you a message. They heard a rumor you live here and came to check it out," Tom replied. "They said a woman named Willa is dying of cancer and wants to make peace. I asked for your picture, pretending not to recognize your name. Who are they and what do they want?" I took out a cigarette, ripped off the filter, and lit it. "The woman is my ex-wife's twin sister. The young man is my ex-wife's illegitimate son, whom she passed off as mine for years based on your experience. Do you think they were telling the truth?" I asked from their body language. "I'd say they're partly honest, but hiding something big," Tom replied. I nodded. My ex-wife and her sister had always been deceptive, appearing genuine while betraying me. Tom went back behind the bar. My thoughts drifted to nearly 7 years ago when I left, promising not to return for another 7 years. They laughed at me, thinking I was a fool. They learned a hard lesson that day, because they never saw or heard from me directly again. They didn't believe how serious or hurt I was. They thought I was just mad at their joke. They had no idea that a few weeks earlier I discovered our youngest child was my brother-in-law's son. That revelation started my journey to this moment. A family member who had seen Willa and Tammy, the evil twins, betray me too often provided the proof. She called them black witches practicing pure evil. Earlier that week, before I left, we discovered a new insurance policy on me with double indemnity for accidental pass away totaling $4 million. If I died. A wise old woman told me to flee. When I left for my work truck, they had no clue. It was already packed with everything I wanted from my 16-year marriage. I drove away without looking back and ended up 2 states away. Part of this was my fault. Since I got Willa pregnant when she was 16 and I was 18, my family convinced me to marry her, and soon we had 2 more kids. They thought it was hilarious. Willa told our daughters, "Your father will come back when he cools off. He needs to regain his sense of humor." A few hours later, a sheriff's car arrived at the house. Willa greeted him at the door. "Are you Mrs. Willa Rain?" he asked. When she said yes, he replied, "Mom, you've just been served." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when she opened the envelope, she realized I had dissolved our marriage without a second thought. The Grand Dame told me she was shocked. My attorney listed all our assets and liabilities, including a DNA report showing the affair lasted a year. The divorce petition included details, receipts, and photos from their hotel meetings. In the envelope was a letter revealing I was suing her husband for child support, infidelity, and defamation. Their laughter stopped. The joke was no longer on me. I had the last laugh. Their joke was that I was only good for making money. Everything I touched seemed to turn to gold, so Willa and the kids were spoiled and never needed anything. Later, Willa found out I had sold 3 of our businesses, paid off all debt, and sold our 2 apartment buildings for a profit. I canceled all credit cards, removed my name from bank accounts, and signed over my half of the house to her. I took half our worth in cash, reducing our cash flow from $10,000 a month to 0. Willa's sister learned the cost of using me. My attorney froze their assets before they got the subpoena, leaving them broke after the divorce. My attorney called Willa in after the divorce and reimbursed her for a quarter of their losses. "Why would he do that?" she asked. My lawyer replied, "For him it was never about the money, it was about principle. He hopes this money gives you a chance to start over and learn from your experience." Willa refused to agree to the divorce without speaking to me, leaving us legally separated but not divorced. I had no need to talk to someone who lied to me for years. She had to work for the first time, learning that money disappears quickly without income. I had my attorney forward important mail to a rented FedEx mailbox, which was then sent to my work address weekly. I did this knowing that Willa and her sister loved to manipulate and plan revenge. I knew they would eventually try to get back at me. It wasn't a question of if, but when their family didn't believe in leaving things be, and my absence would upset them. The longer this went on, the worse their payback would be. They wouldn't let it go easily until now. I thought I had succeeded in escaping with Tammy's appearance. I realized their game wasn't over. I finished my drink and left through the back door in case they were watching the front. I crossed the empty lot behind the house and walked around the block to my pickup. As I was unlocking the door, a man approached and said, "You're a hard man to find, Mr. Arthur Sethraim." "No doubt," I said. "How do you know that my name is Peter Edwards?" "Your oldest daughter Connie is my wife," he replied. "That could be a blessing or a curse." I said, "If she acts like her mother, so why are you here?" "I came looking for you," he said. "Some things need to be settled." "That would be the case if your mother-in-law would just sign the divorce agreement." I said, "What divorce agreement?" Peter asked in surprise. I told him to follow me. We drove through town, then onto a long driveway leading to a farmhouse inside my home office. I showed him the divorce papers and let him make copies. Peter didn't need to know that I didn't live there. I had built it for the Grand Dame, hoping she would eventually leave her old home. Peter was a pleasant-looking, confident, and seemingly educated young man. I wondered if he was who he claimed or part of Willa and Tammy's scheme. He used my Wi-Fi to download files onto his laptop. All important records were stored there with a master copy in a safety deposit box. He was interested in a copy of the sheriff's report Willa signed. When served with the summons, he managed to print a damaging letter from Willa's attorney to mine, acknowledging the agreed property division but refusing to finalize the divorce without my in-person meeting. While Peter worked, I observed his expressions and saw that he was learning new information. My paperwork contradicted what he believed. "Do you think Connie knows?" Peter asked. "That's something you'll have to find out." I replied, "Here's a question for you. Is Willa really dying of cancer?" "Who told you that?" Peter asked. "Tammy and Seth told a bartender that today, but I know Willa is fine. She's in a common-law marriage with her former lawyer and is expecting his second child." Peter said, "She's the one who asked me to find you to start the divorce." She claims it's necessary so she can remarry. He called his wife and put it on speakerphone so I could hear Connie. Did you know your mother lied about the divorce not being finalized? Peter asked. What are you talking about? Connie replied. Mom told us Dad abandoned us and cleaned out whatever was left before leaving town. If it wasn't for our stepfather, we wouldn't have survived. I'm sending you the legal file, said. Peter read it and contact me as soon as possible. While they talked, I grabbed 2 bottles of Bud, opened them, and put one in front of him. Why didn't you tell my daughter you found me? I asked Connie and I have only been married 2 years, and we just had a son 3 months ago for now. I'm not going to tell anyone I found you, Peter said. Everyone thinks I'm investigating a case. He showed me his badge, confirming he was a police officer for the Paradise Police Department. I checked the department's webpage on my laptop proving he was telling the truth. It was the accident report from a few months ago that led me to you, Peter explained. Connie wrote a report on your disappearance which was forwarded to the wanted list. The insurance company informed me of the ruling in your favor, so why didn't you tell Connie? You found me. I asked again after reviewing your file. It became clear something else might be going on, Peter said. I wondered what happened to the $250,000 cash. Willow was supposed to get along with the house deed, and why are they all lying about what really happened? Yeah, sounds like I've been fed lies too, I said as his phone rang. It's my wife. I'll put it on. Speaker Peter said. Please keep it down, hi honey. Connie said, where did you get all this from? Is it true? We've been lied to for years. Seth doesn't know his origins and neither do I. My sister Karen will be shocked. Mom chastised her for defending Dad. They don't speak anymore. This story contradicts everything we've been told. Mom and Auntie gave Dad no choice. They've been manipulating his life for years. What bothers me is that the divorce isn't finalized because Mom won't sign it. What's really going on? It's true I got the information from your father's lawyer's widow. I had to go out of state to find her. Her husband kept duplicates of all his records from the paperwork. It looks like your mother was served with a divorce petition. The same day he left, Peter said, I wrote a note for Connie to talk to her great-aunt Josie if she was still alive. Peter nodded. Pete, it's crucial to find my father now. Connie said he deserves to be free of Mom and her schemes, at least to finalize the divorce. What happened to the money she got? Why did she have to sell the house if it was hers? The more I look into this, the more I wonder what's going on and why she planned to sue him for desertion as soon as she found him. Ask my sister to watch our son a bit longer, and you talk to Aunt Josie about what we found. Maybe she'll open up, Peter said. This must stay between us for now. It looks like there may be serious fraud. Why has your mother been slandering your father for years? I'll need to talk to the district attorney. The $250,000 cash disappeared once it reached your father's lawyer. Don't tell your sister yet. If the DA investigates, it's best. No one else knows. I got up to get us some servings, giving Peter a privacy until he finished his call. Why do you want Connie to talk to Aunt Josie? Peter asked. Josie gathered all the information about Willa and George's affair. I said she never married but watched over the family like a mother. Raising her only daughter, being a single mom, changed her perspective. She thought Tammy and Willa conspired and used George and me, but their ultimate goal is unclear. If it's true, why? Peter asked Aunt Josie's granddaughter. Joey wants her to move in with her, but Josie insists on waiting until the truth comes out. Jody visits with her 2 sons. Jody leads a very withdrawn life. I said socializing with Willa and Tammy takes a toll on everyone. They've used people most of their lives. It wasn't until Josie gave me the material that I realized this. Do you want to ask me about your children before I leave? Peter asked. Not until I know you're who you say you are, I replied. This could be another part of their game. Look into the sudden pass away of my lawyer, because if she's planning to sue me, what makes her think she can win? Peter's face turned white. Realizing what kind of people he had married, we decided to trust each other enough to exchange numbers. He promised to keep me informed. I walked him to the door, shook his hand, and said goodbye. After he left, I cleaned up, locked the apartment, and took the long way home to ensure I wasn't followed, giving me time to think my life had improved since putting the past behind me. Did I want to relive it all again? Knowing Willa and Tammy, I had to prepare for what was coming as they'd go to any length for money. As soon as I walked through the door, 2 little kids grabbed my legs. I picked up my 3- and 4-year-olds, the apples of my eye, just like their mother. I felt blessed to have all 3 of them in my life. My wife Joy called out that dinner was almost ready, so I went to wash up over dinner. I told her about my day since closing the store. I couldn't have imagined my life turning out like this. When I left Paradise almost 7 years ago, I promised my grandmother Josie that I would keep in touch, and I did. Calling her every Sunday about 1.25 years ago, she called me for help. Her granddaughter Joey needed to escape a failed marriage and find a safe place to start over. Jody, 10 years younger than me, had no children and lived on an army base out of state. I didn't know much about her, but I owed Josie and was glad to help. It took me a week to find and partially furnish a 2-bedroom apartment for her in a small town, which was nearly impossible without a friend's help. When I arrived to pick up Jody, she had quit her job, emptied her bank accounts, and packed her bags. Her husband was about to enlist in the army after his last 2-week training exercise. I quietly arrived around 8 in the evening with a rented U-Haul truck. With the help of a few neighbors and friends, we moved everything she wanted into the truck. I left her town in under 4 hours, refusing to say where I was from, for safety. As we drove back, Jody and I started to get to know each other. Late that night, she got a call from her grandmother. I smiled when she said, "Yes, Grandma Art picked me up. You could have warned me. He's a wild bushman who might look half decent if he cleaned up." The next day, Josie contacted Jody's attorney to have all her legal documents sent to my FedEx box. Jody warned that her soon-to-be ex-husband could cause trouble, so I took steps to protect her. Joey then took over managing my store and proved to be an excellent manager, making successful changes and prioritizing customer needs. Her personality attracted many new clients, and she established a well-organized, problem-free staff. Josie had to get a restraining order against Jody's ex due to his constant threats. He was dishonorable, discharged, and moved back to my old hometown, thinking Jody would be there. To keep unwanted attention at bay, Jody wore a diamond ring, which helped her adjust to her new life. She handled banking and bookkeeping, gaining everyone's acceptance as I had introduced her. Jody's honesty and personality made her wonderful, and her long black hair was often hidden from her face. When asked about her ring, she replied, "I'm sure you'll figure it out," sparking rumors that she was my future male or bride. She started bringing me lunch on Saturdays, as I often forgot to eat while working, resulting in weight loss. Our relationship grew naturally. Everyone assumed we were a couple, and Josie kept us updated on events back home. We became curious when we learned Jody's ex was friendly with Tammy. The day Jody's divorce was finalized, our relationship deepened. We celebrated with friends at the local bar, sharing our first kiss during a slow dance under dim lights. 6 months later, we moved in together while the kids were bathing. I shaved off my beard and mustache, leaving only stubble. The kids watched in amazement. I soaked my face in theirs with the bowl and brush. Joey bought me for Christmas, much to their delight. Jody walked in, surprised to see the kids giggling with soapy faces as I finished shaving. "It looks like Daddy would look like you with a clean face." Jody teased, "Should I cut his hair too?" Both toddlers eagerly said, "Yes." I laughed and said, "I'll let the barber handle that on Monday." "No, I'll do it myself before you change your mind." Jody insisted. After drying off the kids and getting them dressed for bed, they sat at the kitchen table and watched Jody cut my hair. By the time she finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I told Jody she did a great job. She sent me to shower off the loose hair while she cleaned up. During this, her grandmother called to say Connie had just left. Joey believed her grandmother was ready to confront the family, straightening things out. Connie learned that my 3 children were supposed to receive $600 each per month from annuities I had set up for child support, but they hadn't received any of it. The next week, I endured jokes from everyone about my new look. People asked Jody if she had to blackmail me into joining normal society. Jody humorously replied that I had promised to bathe at least 3 times a week. Most got the joke, some didn't. It was interesting to see how people acted when they believed they were superior. Bird of Paradise informed me that I would be sued in civil court for child abandonment, desertion, and back child support. Joey and I found this amusing, thinking a judgment would lead to a collection service trying to find me. When the mailman broke the news, he also found it funny. His boss and the DA hired an attorney to represent me, using my situation to piece things together. Peter estimated that Willa and Tammy had stolen over $48,000 from each of our children. They re-examined my former attorney's sudden passaway, turning it into an open criminal case. Jody's ex-husband became a person of interest. If the findings were true, Willa and Tammy faced 7 to 10 years in prison, and Willa's former attorney, now her common-law husband, could be disbarred. The lawyer they hired for me would be paid by them, and I needed to stay hidden to help build a stronger case. We had a few weeks of peace. Then Josie called Sunday night informing us that paperwork would be filed on Monday. She emailed me everything she had collected over 7 years, including notarized statements, videotaped conversations, and names of attorneys for a countersuit. A $2 million accident insurance policy caught my eye, explaining some missing money. Joey found out it had been purchased 6 months before I left. We spent half the night forwarding information to the DA, certain this was a setup to lure me back. The next morning, Joey called the recommended attorneys and picked one, sending them everything along with a retainer. As soon as Willa's team filed the lawsuit, I would serve them before receiving it on Friday morning. Joey called me. Josie was on her way with guests having left Thursday night and stayed overnight at a hotel. This indicated things were heating up. Joey and I decided to close the store on Saturday and have a long weekend with family. Peter was riding with Connie and their son. All Connie knew was that they were visiting Jody. Around 7 p.m. we saw a Ford Explorer and Escape pull up in the driveway. 4 adults got out of the cars. Jody noticed my concern and took my hand. My truck was hidden in the garage, so no one knew I was there. "Who's that with Josie?" Jody asked. "That's Peter, his wife." "Connie holding their baby and Karen, my second oldest?" I replied. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." I said. Joey, holding our youngest, opened the front door. We all came out to greet our guests. Karen burst into tears upon seeing me. I handed my son to his great-grandmother and hugged Karen tightly. Connie handed her son to Peter and joined us. My daughters had grown into lovely ladies, and seeing them together was unforgettable. "Good to see you again, Peter," I said, shaking his hand, after introductions. Jody served a huge dinner: beef shoulder, mashed potatoes, gravy scones, Yorkshire puddings, string beans, and hot apple pie for dessert. After the kids settled, we started discussing everything. "First of all, Art, is it okay if I call you Dad?" Peter asked. I nodded. Then Dad, the DA believes Jody X's car was involved in your lawyer's accident. We're doing a paint comparison with the current owner's car. If it matches, he'll be charged with manslaughter. Peter explained the fire that destroyed his office the same night was treated as arson. He was seen in the background on video. Since Willa and her attorney sealed the divorce papers, they think there are no documents to prove what happened. They filed a lawsuit against you this week. Jody looked at me and burst into tears. "I always thought you were overprotective when you moved me here, but now I see you weren't. I thought your questions to my grandmother were excessive, but now I realize you needed to understand who we were dealing with before making a plan. Willa and Tammy received your lawsuit on Thursday. Josie said they must have realized I was communicating with you. We feared they'd start tormenting me, so we came here quickly. Grandma, we got your house ready." Jody said, "It's furnished, so you just need clothes. I brought most of it in the car." Josie said Connie will ship the rest, including antiques. I gave her power of attorney to sell the house and furniture. It was time to leave paradise. I'll drive back with Peter and Connie and rent a truck to haul everything out. I said it's time to see if our suspicions are correct. "What suspicions?" asked Peter. "The lawsuit against me is a ploy to lure me out." I said, with $2 million in accidental passway insurance, it's clear my former attorney's passway was a test. Peter. Connie. Karen and Josie's faces turned white as they realized the truth. "They were planning your pass away, Dad." Connie said, "You knew it before you left town." "I had a good idea at the time, but even my lawyer didn't believe me." I replied with a broad smile he experienced firsthand that I was right. Peter excused himself to make important calls. This gave my daughters, my wife, and me time to catch up. Joey found pictures of me from when we first met. Both daughters admitted they wouldn't have recognized me. When Peter returned, everyone fell silent. Willa will be taken into custody after the holiday. Peter said we can hold her for 48 hours before charging her with 3 counts of theft for stealing annuities from her children. "We'll slow down the process so she won't get a bond hearing immediately," Peter explained. "Dad, if you can fly in on Wednesday, rent a U-Haul and visit some old places to get noticed. Tell anyone who asks that you're here to pack Josie's things this way. Willa will have to communicate from jail." The district attorney confirmed. "Your suspicions were right. We'll have police protection for you at Josie's house until everything is resolved." "Peter, are you using my children's father as baited to lure out my cousins?" Jody asked. "What assurance do I have that he won't become a sufferer?" I looked at Joey and she saw my determination. Damn, you'll do it without hesitation no matter what I think. She said Jody knew me better than I knew myself. Jody Art has always been like that. That's why I called him to save you from your ex, Josie said. Art never asks anyone to do what he wouldn't do himself. He wants to rid us of those witches for good. My only fear is Art going back into danger, Jody replied, smiling. If Art were a boxer, he'd be a world title holder. Josie said he's fast on his feet and can outthink them. Willa and Tammy have no idea he knows anything. Ladies, relax. I'll be in Peter's hands. I said if anything happens to me, remember he'll have to answer to Connie, my daughter. Peter just nodded, knowing the risks of my return to paradise. Later, while the women were deep in conversation, Peter and I talked. The DA thinks Jody's ex will make his move once he knows you're in town. He'll be furious knowing you rescued Jody from her terrible marriage. Peter said Willa will learn you're here from a planted informant in the city jail early Thursday morning. If he's caught in the act, will he spill everything to save himself? I asked. Based on his military background, he's always admitted responsibility when caught. He's a follower, not a leader, so I expect him to give up easily. He sticks with Willa and Tammy because he's easily manipulated. Peter replied, the sign read, Welcome to City of Refuge Population 34,823. It confirmed that the city council had declared the laws of the United States didn't apply here. It was like the Wild West, with justice depending on what the local authorities decided. Law-abiding citizens were prosecuted, while illegals were ignored. Reflecting a skewed version of progressivism, the working class paid for the sins of others to please those in power who wanted lower wages and cheaper labor. Many actions were taken to provide that opportunity, requiring those in power to look the other way. Not much had changed here in almost 7 years. Aside from the freshly paved main street, everything looked the same. I decided my first stop should be my old favorite place, if it still existed. Thankfully, Bob and Betty's Burger Bar was still around, looking the same but freshly painted. I pulled into the parking lot, got out of the U-Haul truck, and headed for the main entrance at 1115, just before the weekday lunch crowd. I was counting on being recognized since I was a businessman in a former life. We wanted everyone to know I was back. As I took a seat and picked up my menu, I noticed several people looking at me and using their cell phones. A server brought my coffee and creamer and asked if I was ready to order. Is Wednesday special of meatloaf, baked beans, and garlic mashed potatoes available? I asked, how do you know about that? The server inquired, it's for regular customers and not advertised. Tell Jack that Art wants brown gravy and fried onions with the meatloaf. I said. The waitress looked at me like I was crazy. I stood up and said, never mind, I'll tell him myself. I walked through the swinging doors into the kitchen with the server following and shouting my order. Jack turned and looked at me. You dumbass, Jack said with a smirk. You're a few weeks early. Welcome back. Old friend Susan, bring Art's coffee over here so we can catch up while he eats. Jack, the son of the original owner, never changed the name. We'd been friends most of our lives. We chatted until just before rush hour. He asked a staff member to get his wife to join us, giving us a chance to talk about important things. Art, you should know that after you left, the wife ended her friendship with Willa and Tammy for good. She didn't like what they did or said about you and the kids. Jack. A few things are about to happen last night. There was supposed to be an arrest that, if things go right, will trigger several events like a row of dominoes. I explained Connie's husband Peter works with me. That's why I came back early. Jack looked at me seriously and said he's a damn good cop and an honest man. He put 2 of our former city council members in jail last year for corruption. You'll have to tell me more later. There are too many big ears here. We saw Sasha pull into the parking lot. She looked good. I sat down and waited for her to come in, knowing she'd see me from behind and not suspect anything was wrong. Jack, what happened? Susan asked. It was important, Sasha said when she saw me. I stood up and turned to her. Sasha, my little sister, had lost her temper. Her older Meander brother was home. I hugged her tightly like it was just yesterday. It took her a few minutes to calm down. Jack asked the kitchen staff to leave us alone for a few minutes. Do Mom and Dad know you're back? Sasha asked. No, and it's best if we keep it a secret for a few days. I replied. Are you here because Willa was taken into custody last night? My sister asked. Yes, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, I said. Once I settle in, I'll be under police protection. The police are now looking at my former lawyer's pass away with new eyes, believing it's connected to the arson attack on his office. Jack and Saha's expression spoke for themselves. It was well known that the district attorney appointed 3 years ago was trying to resolve many unsolved cases. "You're a decoy to draw someone out," Ja said quietly. "If this is correct, the arson, liquidation, and several other crimes will be solved in the next few days." I replied this was all done to force me back to the city. Willa's arrest and my sudden return will disrupt a carefully planned conspiracy. "What's behind all this?" Jack asked. "A $2 million insurance policy with double indemnity on accidental pass." "Away," I said. "Insured on me." My sister said as we walked out of the restaurant to my rental truck. We were chatting when we noticed Tammy pulling up beside us. "Where are you staying?" My sister whispered. "At the Grand Dame's house. I'll be moving her stuff to the new house." I said she wanted to be away from whatever was about to happen. "Josie left town. Why?" Sasha asked. "She wants to be near her granddaughter and our 2 sons. I answered with a smile. "Joey and I have been together for over 5 years. We have 2 boys who recently turned 3 and 4. My sister was in complete shock. "How did you and Joey end up together?" "Josie and I stayed in touch the whole time. I explained when Jody needed help leaving a failed marriage. Her grandmother called me. I moved her to my place. We believe her ex caused my lawyers pass away in the fire at his office." "Do Tammy and Willa know you're aware of what's happening?" asked Sasha. "No. But they'll find out soon enough when they start making their moves." I replied as Tammy approached us. "Art, I need you to drop part of your lawsuit against us." Tammy said the district attorney will charge Willa within 48 hours. "Unfortunately, my attorney says we can't do that because Willa filed a new divorce petition claiming desertion, abandonment of the child, and back child support." I said until the court rules on her claims, everything has to stay as it is. "You can't say that. How will we bail her out with no assets?" Tammy asked. "You have a court order freezing everything. Maybe your father could help by putting up his house as collateral." I suggested, "After all, you're both his daughters." Tammy turned and walked away, disappointed. "Willa and Tammy's father has nothing to do with them." Sasha said, "Not since he found out about Seth's true origins. He says they turned out just as bad as their mother." That brought a smile to my face. Finished with that, I got in the U-Haul and drove toward Josie's house, stopping to pick up packing materials. 3 hours later, I was backing into Josie's driveway. Using the large mirror, I parked close to the garage door once. Outside, I locked up before entering the house. I checked to make sure nothing had been touched inside. Josie said she left the curtains open, but they were closed. I texted Peter to ask if he had closed them. He replied that police officers in the house might have done it. Knowing this, I unlocked the front door and went inside. "Mr. Racine," the officer said, holding out a cell phone. "Peter Edwards wants to speak with you." "Hi, Peter," I said. "Looks like those who need to know. No." Tammy talked to me at the burger place after I finished my long lunch. She wanted me to lift the lien on her sister's assets and I refused. "I heard that," Peter said. We taped Willa and Tammy discussing their plans. Jody's ex. Brad Press came up a lot. Willa told Tammy to let him know that you know where Jody is. That should motivate him to do what we need. Our hunch was right because Brad showed up. Not an hour later. Willa told him where you were staying. Our informant, who was arrested today, told her you were back to move Josie, Peter said. When Brad asked where, Willa said to her granddaughter Joey's house. A few minutes later, I saw the garage door open. Climbing into the van, I pulled out bundles of cardboard boxes and started packing up the house. At 6:30 p.m., the pizza from Papa John's arrived. When the delivery driver knocked, I opened the door. He asked if I was moving. I said no, just helping a friend. Brad made his move around 11 p.m. using a tire iron. He picked the front door lock and slipped inside. Seeing a light in the kitchen, he headed there, pulling a 9mm pistol from under his shirt. He found me sitting there drinking coffee. "Hey, Art." Brad said, "Willa and Tammy say hi. I'm here to find out where Joey is so I can visit her." "Sorry, but I'd never tell my lawyer's eliminator or the man who burned his office." I replied, "Before you eliminate me, because we both know you will." "How much were you promised from the insurance settlement? What makes you think I did it?" He asked, taking the bait, because you seem like someone they could manipulate into doing their dirty work. "So how much of the $4 million on the accidental passaway policy did they promise you?" $4 million. They told me it was only $750,000, he said. I laughed and said, "Did you know? Seth is actually the son of Tammy's first husband?" His face turned white. "George and I have been manipulated and used by both twins for years. My attorney working on my divorce sued George and Tammy for everything they had." Brad's face went white. That's why I knew Willa suing me for desertion and back child support was a scam. I said. The divorce was finalized and just needed her signature. She manipulated me into coming back. That's when I put it all together. You're just another pawn they played, so ask yourself, what are their plans for you? My divorce only delayed their plan to eliminate me. You eliminating my lawyer put their original plan back in motion. You have a chance to set them back for years, knowing them as we do. What does your gut tell you? It's hard to watch a fool realize he's expendable once he's no longer needed. I'm screwed either way. Brad said. The fact that your lawyer lost control of his car and hit a tree at 70 miles an hour is manslaughter. Manslaughter would get me life. You could get 5 to 10 for manslaughter, but liquidation is life. When I'm dead, they can claim you acted out of rage over Jody and didn't know what you were doing. Did they set you up to be a scapegoat? Most accidental pass-away policies don't cover liquidation. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Asked Brad. You'd make a deal, turn in state's evidence, and hope your cooperation is taken into account that way. You'd get revenge on those planning to take you out. I said, Brad put the weapon on the table and said, call the police, I said. Brad, turn around. They're standing right behind you. Connie watched her husband on the phone, wondering what was wrong. Peter had told her that her father was at Josie's. A late call on his cell phone woke them both up. While he was talking, she put the kettle on to make hot chocolate for them. When Peter hung up the phone, he was smiling. Your father surprised us all tonight. He talked Brad out of it and basically forced him to confess everything. The undercover cops videotaped the whole thing. Connie froze with surprise. How did my father do that? He told Brad some facts he didn't know, like the truth about Seth's origins. Peter said, I think your father convinced Brad that the insurance policy wouldn't pay out for liquidation. That was the deciding factor. Even I don't know if that's true, but it created enough doubt for Brad to accept the consequences of a lesser offense instead of life without parole. Aunt Josie always said your dad was a quick thinker, but this was unexpected. What does this mean for my mom and sister? Asked Connie if Brad agrees to testify against them in court. They'll both be charged with arson, manslaughter, and at least attempted liquidation of your father, said Peter. Connie picked up her cell phone and called Jody to let her know. They made a plan. Josie would watch the kids for a few days because Joey was going to the airport. Connie would meet her when she got a text with her arrival time after finishing the call. She explained everything to her sister by then. Peter had dressed and was heading to the station to get Brad's signed statement before the night ended. I didn't wake up until 8 in the morning. The first thing I did was call Jack to get the front door fixed. He said he knew someone and within half an hour they were there. The door was replaced, new trim and lock installed. The gentleman was just finishing when my daughter Connie drove up with Jody. Jody jumped out of the car and ran to me, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I realized how much she had been through. Brad was taken into custody last night. I said he surrendered to the police, protecting me. I was never in any real danger. If that was the case, why didn't you call me? Joey said, why did I have to hear about it from Connie? It was almost 2 in the morning when the police cleared out. I answered honestly. I figured I'd call you today. I put my arm around my wife and pulled her close. I promise. I will never put myself in that kind of danger again. As soon as the repairman finished, we locked the car, put her luggage away, and went to my brother's restaurant to eat. There we were met by Karen, Sasha, and my parents. Jack's staff had to move 2 tables so we could all sit together. Jody was warmly greeted by everyone. Our breakfast when it arrived was excellent. Jack was so excited about what had happened that we ate it all. My parents were thrilled to learn that Joey and I had 2 sons named Carson and Hunter, after both my grandfathers. They looked through all the pictures of our children and us that Jody had saved on her cell phone. My daughters opened up and told them about discovering me with Josie. We were still there when Peter joined us. I noticed he looked tired. Willa and Tammy are in custody now. Peter said Brad has confessed to everything, including his initial plan to eliminate his father. He'll be charged with arson and manslaughter when he testifies, in the witch trials. Tammy and Willa faced 3 counts of grand larceny, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit liquidation and fraud. The district attorney is meeting with the divorce judge who handled your father's case to expedite the finalization of your divorce. Peter. Are you saying that Art and I can finally get married? Asked Jody, trying to process what she had heard. The DA took the papers to the judge. Peter explained, along with Dad's original divorce papers. He hopes the judge, being fully informed, will waive Willa's signature requirement, the waiting period, and issue the divorce certificate. Jody, I said, I think I'd better buy you a proper engagement ring today, and finally propose. Everyone murmured at my remark. Tears welled up in Jody's eyes. She had always believed we would do it, but this was something she hadn't expected. Before we left, Mom and Dad made us promise to come over for dinner. Jody and I busied ourselves packing until about 5:30. Then we headed to my parents' house for dinner. Mom and Dad had a lot of questions. Joey shared how I had saved her from a failed marriage thanks to her grandmother. Then she talked about getting her first job and where it led. We were still enjoying their company. When Peter and Connie arrived with my divorce certificate, it was good to know that I was now free. When Joey had a chance to talk, she bragged about our children and our life together. My mom said we should have a wedding before you both get back. That's when my father got Peter's attention, grabbing a glass of fresh beer each. We followed him to the den because we couldn't get a word in edgewise. When word got out that Tammy had been arrested, people started calling with more information. Half of the DA's staff had to help. Turns out what we knew was just scratching the surface of what Tammy and Willa were up to now. It looks like the mayor will go down with them, and what's going to happen to Willa's common-law husband. I asked out of curiosity, how involved was he in all of this? He'll probably be disbarred, but he'll be involved in raising their children. Nothing we found links him to the witches. Peter said. Has anyone notified? Aunt Josie, Connie asked. Jody's dad wears a size 6.5 ring, in case you were wondering. A few minutes later, Peter and I were on our way to the mall, where he bought Connie a set of knowing Jody's taste, and I bought a 3-ring engagement set. When we returned, we were pleased to find that they didn't know we had left. I was on the phone with Josie when Karen and her boyfriend showed up. The house was full, and we all moved into the living room. The men had to bring chairs from the kitchen. Dad told Jody to sit in his chair. This let my mom know something was up, so she watched the scene with eagle eyes. There was silence in the room as I walked over and knelt down to ask my common-law spouse to legally become my wife. I caught her off guard. Of course she said yes. The party went on. My father proudly said, I need to catch up on almost 7 years of drinking with my son and Jody and Art. Your engagement is the best way to start. Peter had to drive Jody and me back to Josie's. A lot of stress and worry were relieved. Friday we went to City Hall to pick up our license. Joey found out she could fit into Connie's wedding dress. Jack agreed to be my best man. Karen became Jody's métier of honor. The DA agreed to perform the ceremony. I had to buy a suit at Macy's. There was no way my future wife was going to let me marry her in blue jeans on Sunday. Afternoon in my parents' backyard with the entire family present, we said our vows to everyone's admiration. Even the twins' father was there. We told everyone we didn't want any gifts, but my former father-in-law handed me an envelope. Colin, this is not a wedding gift. It's your early inheritance, he said with a smile. The rest of my estate will go to your daughters. I slipped the envelope into my suit and forgot about it for the rest of the day. Everyone videotaped the ceremony and texted it to Aunt Josie. Someone asked where we were going on our honeymoon. Jody's response was, after everything we've been through, once Grandma gets settled in the new house, our honeymoon will be a week in Florida and a week in California enjoying Disney with the kids, because without family we wouldn't be where we are today. Before we headed home the next day, I handed Jody an envelope. Inside was a bank promissory note for $100,000 with a note it read, "Thank you for helping to fix karma. I always thought the twins liquidated their mother. I will enjoy watching them get the reward they deserve for their deeds, and so will my granddaughters." Jody put the envelope in her purse without saying anything to anyone. After hugging my daughters and parents, Jody and I climbed into the U-Haul. We drove home finally free of the past.